I don't love you anymore. Wait, come back. Hey, and welcome to our podcast on marriage and love and everything beautiful. Like my wife. But yeah, we're talking about the hard conversation that last night in youth group, actually, we were talking about this. And the question was, what if you're in a marriage and you don't feel in love anymore? And someone's like, well, you get a divorce. And I'm like, no, that's not the answer.
And they were so like nonchalant.
Yeah, like of course,
of course you
that's
do.
what you do. And
Right.
but it's, I mean, it's not surprising, that they thought that, because that's kind of what the norm is in our culture. Marriage is just replaceable. This marriage ain't working. Shoot, get a new spouse and try again. That's kind of like the low view of marriage we have in our culture nowadays. And so that's what we're wrestling with. What if you're in a marriage right now where you don't really feel super Valentine's lovey-dovey feelings for your spouse? And so we were talking about like this. We don't feel like we've ever been a spot of like our marriage is absolutely dead. There's no love in between us anymore. Why even stay in this any longer? But we're both committed that even our marriage is dead. We're staying in that dead marriage.
So to preface this, he started our marriage off in our marriage vows by saying, in your vows to me, no matter how horrible or how awesome our marriage is, like, I'm here, I'm fully committed. So I feel like the fact that he said that on day, like it hadn't even been a day yet.
I came into marriage wide open, baby.
He was like, it could be the worst thing I've ever done, and I'm committed forever. Every breath I've got. And so, yeah, I do think that, like, it's not on the table. It's not. And actually, in our marriage counseling, I remember something that Eric and Mary talked about was you don't even say the word divorce.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even let yourself get to an argument and say that.
Yeah, like the D word is the worst curse word you could spew in your marriage. Never allow that out of your mouth.
The D word. And they were pretty, like, intense, like this is not even, and I think it makes sense though in retrospect, like almost 6 years later, or actually I guess it's past 6 years since that meeting with them, but that you don't even, not only sometimes we joke about things, but there's like a little hint of truth and it just like gets you closer, but then also just the hurt you cause each other when you say that, you can't take it back, like the words you speak are out. And so
and so before we get into like any practical tips, if you're in that spot, I feel like you have to back up and like, okay, why we just jump out of marriage if it's dead is first, like, we have a wrong view of what marriage is about. Like, we think marriage is about me and my happiness, but as like Kevin and Brittany Douglas are in their small group now in the book Sacred Marriage, that makes it very clear in that book, as well as like Francis Chan's You and Me Forever book, that marriage is not about you, but about God and his glory. And I went in and I said that in my marriage vows because I knew even if our marriage was horrible, divorce does not honor God, but staying committed and faithful in a marriage, even if it's terrible, honors God, because God is faithful to us, even when we're terrible to him, even when we're unfaithful and adulterous and all types of stuff like that. And so I wanted to give glory to God no matter how enjoyable our marriage was or not. So just having that perspective that marriage is not about you and your happiness, but it's about giving glory to God and honoring him.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's honestly something that can be hard to say in our culture today because it's uncomfortable, because divorce is so prevalent.
Yeah.
And so you almost don't even want to say that because you don't want to offend. And I think when that happens, that gets passed down to our kids to where, well, this is acceptable and it's common. And I think sometimes as adults, we're not saying it kind of out of a desire not to hurt other people who have been through that. But the reality is that isn't how God designed marriage. He didn't design it to end in divorce. It's one and done, baby.
Yeah.
Until we're done.
Yeah.
That's it. And so anyway, I just think we desperately, as adults, have to so passionately defend marriage and what you talked about it being sacred. not just for our own marriages, but for the hope of our children. Because I feel like there's a lot of children who are totally disillusioned, that you can't trust anything anymore. You can't trust in your parents.
Yeah, who made a vow to each other that till death do us part, that, you know, they don't keep their word.
And you can't trust the government, and you can't, and then you just pass it on. You can't trust this, you can't trust this. So how do they feel like they can trust God? And where does that put our teenagers as they're getting ready to start life? You don't want to bare your heart and soul to someone to know that it's going to get crushed, or maybe you'll attempt it, but you're not going to give all of yourself. You know, I'm going to shield myself just in case, because I know that this is inevitable, you know, and so it just has created this awful spot for teenagers, but young adults as well are there. This culture of just get what you can while you can, and that's the best way to do it. And we've lost so much in Love Thy Body. Nancy Pearcey talks about a lot of that, like with hookup culture and this self-satisfaction that we think marriage is just, if you're going to do it, which that's a crazy notion now, that we think, you know, it's all about me, and if I am going to do it, you know, if it's even going to last. I actually saw this article one time in a magazine, and this woman was glorifying the different dresses she had worn in her weddings, and she was like, in my first wedding, and I wore this, and she talked about that marriage, and then her second wedding a few years later, and it wasn't she lost her husband or that there was some sort of horrible whatever. It was kind of just, it just didn't work out, and so then for my next dress, and it was like a big magazine, and I think it was maybe even a wedding magazine, and I'm like, how does this,
you can just tell,
like, how is this where we are?
That woman is so self-absorbed. Like, marriage is all about her, and you know.
But this is what the magazine. So it's not even just this woman that at the beginning of marriage, at the wedding, you're going to, in the magazine, glorify the different styles of wedding dresses you've worn throughout your life. Like,
it's like, well, why don't you just get divorced again so you can show off another wedding dress?
And that is just kind of just like, you're here for a little while and then you move on, and it's so heartbreaking, because it's heartbreaking for us in the moment, but for our kids, you know. And anyway,
so and one, you know, one caveat, how do you say that? Is, you know, if you're in an abusive relationship, we're not saying to just stay there and keep being abused. You know, you need to separate, and there might even be legal action you need to take, but
yes,
the separation,
please do not feel like we're saying,
but the separation is in hopes and prayerful hopes that there can be a restoration one day, and that you can move back in and stay married, and that you guys can work it through with counseling and stuff like that.
And sometimes that does not happen. I mean, there are, and actually, Dobson's wife, Shirley Dobson, talks about how her dad was an alcoholic, and I think was also abusive to her mom, and that when she was 10, her mom did decide to get a divorce, and she talked about eventually that this man walked into their lives and taught her what that was supposed to look like. But that's, I think we tend to say, like, that sooner than it should come, but also we act like every situation will end that way, and it just doesn't. Do you know what I'm saying? I feel like we're like, oh, well, you'll just get remarried and it'll be better. Or you'll just get a divorce here and we'll get it all fixed. And it just doesn't always work that way.
Yeah.
So basically what we're trying to start with is, before you even get to, oh my goodness, we've fallen out of love with each other, you have to understand, why am I committed to marriage? Why is marriage a bigger deal?
What is the purpose of marriage?
Because honestly, we have been honest about our marriage. We definitely have never gotten to a point where we're like, it's over, it's dead, it's, you know, but there are times it is hard and it's not easy, and your spouse wants something different than what you want, and you are going different directions in an argument or something, and you're just like, how could you even, you know, be saying this? I don't understand. So in that moment, having that foundation of marriage is sacred. It is not something to be taken lightly. This is a big deal, and it's not just a big deal for my happiness, my comfort. Of course, you can think of your children, but even bigger than that, I am honoring God. God has given me the gift of this marriage, and I I am committed. Like, I am staying here till death do us part.
Yeah, amen. And so let's lean into that. You know, we're not the perfect people to talk about this because we haven't been to that place, but there's definitely times where like I don't like you right now, or I'm not feeling any romantic intimacy, you know, right now between us. You know, like you know, whatever. There's when you're in a tough place, we're really exhausted with, you know, all of our children, or we're just really busy, and the connection has kind of fizzled out. How do we reinvigorate that?
Yeah. So there's a few things I think have to happen. And honestly, for us, I feel like often when I'm the one who's having a hard time, it can be as simple as I have not slept. I have not gotten good sleep. Or you have not gotten good sleep. That is honestly such a huge thing that I think we minimize. And sometimes it's not just sleep, but it can also be rest. Like, what's your schedule like? Are you taking time away to actually take a minute and have time to read your Bible or exercise or get outside? And are you filling your cup back up? Because sometimes you're coming to things and something that wouldn't even be a big deal is a big deal just because you're in a really bad spot, you know?
Yeah. Yep.
And so that is a thing. And honestly, we have a lot of little kids right now. And so that is not going away. Thank God. It's such a gift. But the reality is the dishes are not just going to disappear. And I'm not going to magically just have nothing on my to-do list. However, we can find little things like, realistically, are we staying up late to watch TV, to scroll on our phones? Are we doing those kinds of things? And then that's taking away the little bit of extra time we could have just gotten in sleep that would have been beneficial, or talk to our spouse, but we are like, we need some time for me, but we're not getting time. You know, I think that's a good place to start, is just figuring out, is it actually this, or is it something outside of our interaction that's putting a ton of pressure? And how can you minimize even a little bit? Something I heard that was mentioned in an awesome podcast, actually, I listened to, by Janice Johnson. She talked about, just think of one thing you could do. Take 15 minutes and organize the closet that's been driving you crazy, or do that laundry that's been, you know, piling up. She said, do something that then will feed back in, that as an energy loop. Don't just, you know, if you really are exhausted and you need the nap, take it. But she's like, don't get on your phone and scroll. Take 15 minutes to actually build yourself back up. And then she talked about, well, you go, because I had something else she shared, but I can share it later.
No. I was just thinking, like, so, like, if you think of it, there's like a proverb that's like, without throwing more wood on the fire goes out, or something like that. I would have to look at that again. But, like, if you think of your marriage romance as a fire, you know, you want that fire to be burning, baby. You want the flames roaring. But it takes work, you know, to keep the fire going. And so, like, when our fire has fizzled out to just the coals, to just the embers, it's not dead yet. There's still some there. I try to think of, like, how can I be very gentle and tender to this little flame to, like, help it keep going, and how can I not do something stupid right now to put the little fire left out, you know? And so that's really, like, basically, like, we're having tension, we're, you know, repeatedly having arguments and not seeing eye to eye on things. How can I make sure I guard my mouth to not say something that's going to make the situation worse, or, like, my attitude to not pile on to the, you know, because when you say something that offends me, I'm like, that's so disrespectful. How dare she say that? You know, I could come back and, like, really, you know, add on, but I try my best to guard myself to not stamp out the fire, you know. And so that's big. But then, like, you got to know your spouse. Like, for me, I know you are. When we're upset, you get into Miss Independence mode, Miss I'm fine, and I'm not sharing about how I'm really feeling. You know, it's not even worth talking about because you don't care about me, and, like, you get into all that mindset. And so I try to just very gently, you know, give her time. You gotta give her space, or it's going to make things worse. But when she's ready, just like, hey, I'm ready to talk about this. When you want to talk about this, and, you know, just try to be really, you know, you make sure you really get the chores done. So you like make sure everything, you cross your T's, dot your I's to make sure she's in her, that you can help her get into the right spot to talk to you. And then you gotta just when she finally opens up, you gotta let her just You know, really, really let it all out, because she's built up all this anger and frustration inside, and you got to just let her share it all without responding in a hurtful way. And then when she's shared it all, and if you like, hear her and like can repeat back to what she said, she feels so known, so understood. And then, if you even throw in like I'm sorry, a genuine one of something you did wrong, and suddenly that flame's starting to cook again. And then I know my wife's physical touch, and you start doing some massages or something like that, the fire is coming back. And so that's my little marriage technique for you, baby. So hopefully that's helpful to somebody.
No, I think that's great. And then I think figuring out what's been helpful for you as a couple in the past. If you really are at a point where you're like, we're just not connected, we feel like it's dead, there's nothing there. Mm-hmm. Think back to what drew you to your spouse in the first place. So something Tanner and I love to do when we were first dating is we'd go on run dates, mm-hmm. and we'd just go running together. And so now we try to still do that. It's not every time, but it's something that kind of just reignites that, and it reminds us of when we were first dating, and you just kind of do some of those things that you used to do.
Yeah, and on that, like for Valentine's Day is coming up, maybe a great date idea would to revisit, some special spots of your past. Like we've gone back to where you told me you loved me. We've gone back to, Sullivan's Island, where I told you I loved you and that I proposed to you. In different places where we've danced in the past, we've gone back there and danced again. Different things that kind of just bring back that romance. Can be fun.
And something we bought this sign on our honeymoon that says, "In this kitchen we dance," mm-hmm. and it reminds me. It's in our kitchen, and it just be spontaneous with each other. Give each other a kiss. Give each other a hug. Twirl your spouse. Mm-hmm. Because she would love it in the kitchen or the living room or wherever, that there could just be this tender love. And I think a lot of it too, in situations that are so hard, like let's say 3 of our children are crying at the dinner table, which happens.
Yes.
Sometimes all 4.
Yep.
And not every time, but that does happen occasionally where it's that many people are upset. And being able to just look at each other and just make eye contact, and you could still kind of smile and just be like, we're here. Like, how are we getting out of this one? It makes it all lighter. And I think sometimes we feel like we have to rework everything, when really just pause for a moment and look at each other, hold each other's hand, touch your feet under the table like we're in this together. That might not be your thing, but just even the eye contact, and have little like signs with each other where you could you tug your ear and that's like, oh boy, it's crazy right now, or something where you could just communicate fun things with your spouse that it's just for the 2 of you. And it kind of feels like just this intimacy mm-hmm. and connection that even surrounded by children, or you could be anywhere that you could say something to them. It's just like a sweet little thing.
Yeah, and another thing that just came to mind is there's that movie Fireproof, great, older Christian movie now that's really great on having a dead marriage and bringing it back to life. And there's like the Love Dare, and there it's like 40 days of different things you can do to try to reinvigorate your marriage. So that's another good tool.
Yeah, so essentially we feel like the biggest thing is to start with the foundation that marriage is bigger than you, mm-hmm. bigger than your spouse.
It's for God, not for you.
It's valuable. And it is. It's about the Lord. It's a commitment. As a Christian, that's it. Like mm-hmm. we are.
You might not feel like I can't do this for my spouse right now. Like I don't like them, but you remember, who can I do it for? If you're a Christian, you understand Jesus has done everything for you. Can you not do it for Him?
Yes, yes, the one who would die for us and give His all. Mm-hmm. And so understanding that, and then taking the steps of finding something that you're grateful for in your spouse. Mm-hmm. That is a big thing that I've heard many times can make a huge difference. And it can be really hard to find it, but you work hard and you can find something
mm-hmm. and share it with them.
Yeah. And then tell them, I was thinking about it, I'm so grateful for this. And keep adding to your list. Mm-hmm. And the more you do that, it really helps. And then when you're irritated about something that your spouse has done, you can think back on what they've also done that you're thankful for, and it makes that other thing less of an issue. So That's a
Cool. Thanks so much for listening. God bless you and your marriage, and keep that fire going.